This is what the GDP of countries in 2000 looked like in trillions of dollars. USA was at 10.3, Japan was at 4.9, Germany at 2 trillion, UK at 1.4, and France at 1.3. 5 years later, China moved in, displacing France, and the US surged ahead. In 2010, China moved up a couple of ranks to become the second largest economy, while the US went further ahead, clearly far ahead of any of the other economies, and UK dropped out of the top five. In 2015, China and the US moved ahead further. The gap between these two economies and the rest was the biggest gap, while France moved out, replacing UK. In 2020, this gap further widened with the top two economies, US and China, being miles ahead of the rest, and the next three economies don't even add up to the size of the largest economy. What I just showed you is a bar chart race. This was created just in PowerPoint. I'll show you how you can make this bar chart raise yourself. Let's start by getting the data for the historical GDP of each of these countries. So if we take the average nominal GDP, which is on this table in Wikipedia, I'm just going to copy the whole table and paste it in Excel. So let's do that. I'm just going to do this once again, paste it as a new page, and we now have this data. But it's not quite in a usable format. So let's create a new sheet and we'll add it to that. What I'll do is paste special, which you can get to by clicking on paste and select paste special, just the values so we can get rid of the images, and it gives us this kind of a clean structure. Great. Now, this is still not really usable. What we want is, well, all the years in one column, all the countries in one column, all the values in one column. So what we could do is maybe take these, put them right next to each other, and then transpose the whole thing. So let's do that. We'll see if we can. It's probably possible to automate this, but it's actually not that hard to do it manually. So we'll take about 30 seconds and put all the countries in one row and all their GDPs right below them. And we're almost done. We should be concluding with this. Great. So now that we have this, we can take this entire data and paste special again by values, except this time we transpose it so that it comes in this order. So we have the country and we have the GDP, but we lost the year. So let's add that. This was for 2020, and the first 10, effectively, if we put in the rank as 1 and all the way up to, let's say, 10, and then we copy the same thing over. This should have been rank 1 again. So every 10th item thereafter is just repeated. We do the same here. All of these are for 2020, but everything after that is for that year minus 5. We are going in increments of 5 years. So now we have the year, rank, country, and GDP as a single data set. Let's do a little bit of cleaning up on this. I remember seeing FRG as a country here, but that's really West Germany. So we'll change that to West Germany. And now I think we have clean data. Let's validate. We'll create a pivot table here where we have for each of the countries the GDP for each year. And that gives us a sense. Let's get rid of the grand totals. We won't really be using those. And we'll sort it in descending order of the, no, not 1960, but sort it in descending order of this year, maybe sort largest to smallest. Great. So we have United States, China, and so on. It'll also be good to see these values in a little cleaner way. So we'll format the numbers and put them as 0 decimals with a comma separator. And with that, we now have a reasonably clean representation of the countries. Let's assume we don't want to look at the top 10 countries. Maybe we only want the top 5 countries. So I'm going to filter only ranks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And maybe we don't want to see it for all of history. Let's just see what happened in this millennium. So we'll only select 2020 down to down to the year 2000. So this gives us the data set that we can now create a bar chart race with. So now we have a starting point where for each of these countries, which are in the top 5 ranked countries by nominal GDP, we know what their GDP was in the years 2000 all the way to 2020. Let's create a bar chart race out of this. We will go to PowerPoint and start filling, effectively creating that race. Let's change the layout to just a blank slide. And what we want is to draw one shape with maybe the country name. And let's maybe not even worry too much about the value right now. So we just, well, let's put in the value as well. Outside of this, we'll put in the country name as a piece of text. Let's say country, and move this out here. So we have one country with a certain value, we'll have another country with a certain value, and we'll have rank 3, rank 4, and finally rank 5 as the data set. Let's plot this for the year 2020. And let's assume our title. Now, how does one actually make these in as bars? Well, okay, so I think there's a bit of a misalignment here. They're not vertically aligned. Let's sort that. Yeah, now they're vertically aligned. One thing that I do is simply put in the values numerically. What I mean by numerically is explicitly set the width and the height for each of these bars based on these numbers. Now, how does one do that? Well, let's increase. Okay, let's go to any of these shapes. You can go to shape format and type in the width. So let's say that the width for United States in 2020 should be instead of 6.06 inches, 20.93 inches. Let's see what that does. So that's 20.93. Now, that goes well beyond the chart, but it starts by giving us a sense of scale. And maybe if I divided that by 2, so half of that, 10 point, well, let's explicitly make it 2000. So that's 10 point something, and we'll round it off to just 2 decimal places. That's 10.47. Will that fit? 10.47. Yes, that fits. So we can take all of these values and round them by dividing by 2000. So this was cell B5. I'm going to round all of these, and this is what I need to plot on as the values. So let's just copy these values and paste them here. Good. So now I know the numbers that I need to put in. Ideally, we should use a tool to fill in these numbers, but we are going to do this manually. I'm going to put in, let's see, 10.47. This is 9.02. And I pressed a comma instead of 9.02. Ooh, I hit a comma again. 9.02. The next is, oh, sorry, that was United States the previous year. This should have been 7.39. 7.39. We have 2.53, 1.9. So 2.53, 1.9. And we have 1.35 for the United Kingdom. 1.35. Just to get a sense of scale, let's do the same for 2000 and see if the numbers are okay. So we have starting with 5.14, 14, and we end with, well, this is France really at 0.66, 0.66. So is this okay? I think so. Yeah. So we start from somewhere around here and it grows up or down. So from a bar chart race perspective, this is a reasonable scale. Now, Let's start putting in the country names. So that's the US of A, that's China. Um, the next on the list is Japan, Germany, and UK. So Japan as the third largest economy, Germany as the fourth, and UK as the fifth. With the values that we type in, that's what were the units for these? They are in um, hmm, billions of USD. So let's type it in trillions of USD with the comma replaced by a decimal. So we have 20.9, we have 14.8, we round it off, and then 5.1, 3.8, and 2.7. So those are the values that we get from here, and we've inserted those here. Uh, let's do the same thing for the next year. Well, actually, no, let's do that for 2000. The countries that we have are the US of A. The second largest country in 2000 is Japan. And the third that we have is Germany. Fourth that exists here is the UK, and the fifth is France, with China not being on this list. The values that we have are USA at 10.3, Japan at 4.9, and Germany at what's this 1.9, or well, closer to 2, UK at 1.4, and France at 1.3. Now, if we have these, oh, I haven't filled in the size of these as well. So let's quickly do that. This was 5.14. If I select shape format and choose the numbers 2.44, 0.98. So that's 2.44. The next one is 0.98. The next one is 0.72 and 0.66. 0.66 is already done. 0.72 and 0.66. Great. So now we have a regular movement, except it's not animated. For this, we introduce slide transitions, specifically the morph transition. And what the morph transition does, if you look at the text, is the text now moves smoothly. But these don't, the bars don't. And to get the bars to move, what we have to do is go to the home and select selection pane and give these rectangles names. So this we should call it, and the name should be preceded by exclamation mark. So you should say exclamation, exclamation, USA. And on the next slide, this should also be called exclamation, exclamation, USA. So when we do this in the transition, it knows that these are really the same bars. So US actually expands. Similarly, if we took Japan, and we know that this is actually for Japan, and we copied the same thing for Japan in the next year, that will allow Japan to literally move from one to the other. So Japan is moving from here to here. Let's do it quickly for the others. This was China, so we'll put in exclamation, exclamation, China. And China doesn't exist here. We have Germany, so that's exclamation, exclamation, Germany. And that does exist in the next year. So we'll take that and change rectangle 7 to Germany. We have UK. Let's replace that with exclamation, exclamation, UK. And in the next year, UK stays as UK. And we also have France, even though it doesn't exist in the previous, in 2020, we have France being identified. So now we have a bar chart race where the results in 2020 are actually moving smoothly. France appears and China has vanished. Let's do the same thing for the intermediate years. So for 2020, we're going to copy that data, move it to 2015. The numbers change. So I'm going to skip the process of doing this after a while, but I'll just show you how we do it for 1 year. So in 2015, the value is 18.0, China is at 11.2, Japan is at 4.4, Germany is at 3.4, and UK is at 2.9. Did I get that right? Yeah, in 2015. So yeah, UK seems to have declined in the last year. What we also have to do is change these sizes. So let's quickly do that. That's where are the sizes? Shape format 9.02, and it's 5.61, 2.19, 5.61, 2.19. Germany is 1.68 and 1.43 for UK. 1.68 and 1.43. So now we have 3 years worth of data. The first year is 2020. 2015 needs a morph transition. So let's go to transition and select morph. So 2020, that's what it was like in 2015, and that's how it moved in the year 2000. We really should change the order, starting with 2000 and then going on to 2015. So what I'm going to do now is offline fill in the rest of the data. Now that we have the bars filled in for all of the years, starting from 2000 to 2020, with the numbers and the field, the names of the shapes filled in appropriately, let's see what this finally looks like. So that's 2000. USA is the largest economy, followed by Japan, then Germany, then UK, then France. In the next year, we have China coming in into the picture while all the other economies are growing. But 2005 is the year where there is a huge upset. China moves into place number two, moving out Japan, Germany, and France, and in fact pushes UK off the list. And in 2015, the US and China surge ahead, creating a huge gap between the top two economies and the rest of the world. And in 2020, that position is further strengthened. In fact, the gap between the USA and China is further reduced, while the other three top economies wouldn't even come close to the number one economy and barely reach the number two economy. So we're able to get that story. But from a visual perspective, there are a few things that could be improved. The first is when China emerges from the bottom in 2010, we see it and it creates a great impact. But in the year 2005, so when France is replaced by China, this doesn't really feel good. What if it could come from the bottom? So that's one thing that I'd like to do. The second thing is these animations are a bit slow. I probably want it a little faster. So let's take the second one. I can select all of these. The transition that we use is morph. We can specify a duration of 1 second instead of 0.5. So now the movements will look a little crisper. They'll be a little faster. And I like that. The second is if I want China to appear from the bottom here, then I can place it at the bottom in the previous slide, maybe just outside of the slide. So China has some number, it doesn't really matter what it is. In fact, I could just leave it blank. And now what happens is the same China object in 2000 doesn't exist because it's off the screen, but then comes from the bottom and lands here. Similarly, I'd actually like to see France going out. So I'll take France and move it out of the picture here. It's still there somewhere, but not quite in the picture. And the actual value really doesn't matter. The size really doesn't matter too much. So with this, I'll be able to see China coming in and France going out. Now out here, everything is moving within the slide. So it's not an issue in 2010. But in 2015, France is going out and UK is coming in. So I'd like UK to come in from the bottom. So we'll add it to the previous slide somewhere below the list like this. Yeah, I guess that should be fine. We don't really need a number there and the width really doesn't matter. And similarly, France should go out of the picture here. So we'll just take that in a little bit and move it below. Again, the number doesn't matter, the size doesn't matter too much. And I think that should be it. So with this in 2000, we have China coming in at the bottom, growing dramatically while France replaces UK. UK comes back into the picture, but China grows dramatically. And in 2020, there's no changes in that list. Now, what we've done is created this entirely in PowerPoint, and there was a fair bit of manual work. It's possible to automate that using libraries, and instead of having to type in these numbers explicitly, we can just take the data from here and automate it. But that's not the objective of this discussion. What we are able to do is create this smooth bar chart race where we can choose the format of each of these. We can decide that we want these shapes to be colored in a certain way and formatted in a certain way with images and so on, and retain all of the power and the flexibility that PowerPoint offers while still being able to create powerful animated bar chart races.